All right, so today I want to talk to you about a topic that I was thinking of as I was running this morning. Thought I'll share it with you because it was fresh on my mind. And it's also a little bit controversial because I'm comparing freight brokers and truck drivers. Anytime you compare freight brokers and truck drivers, there will always be some disagreement, some controversy, because there are different perspectives on the truck driver side and the freight broker side. So I'm going to share with you today my perspective, how I see it. Now, it's important to understand that it's an opinion. It's a perspective. Doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It just means that's the way that I see it. So I hope that you can respect that and listen to what I have to say. And then if you disagree with it, please feel free to drop a comment in the comment section and tell us how you see it. Because the one thing is for certain, what we get from disagreement is communication sometimes. And when we can communicate, we can understand each other better. Not necessarily agree, but have a better understanding, maybe even a better appreciation for one another. So let's jump right into the topic. The topic is, who is the backbone of the trucking industry? We hear that often, the backbone of the trucking industry, right? And when I look at that, I just start out looking at how the industry is configured. Truck drivers, freight brokers, shippers. Now, shippers have freight, and that freight has to be shipped throughout the United States. Those shippers have different places that they are shipping freight. And even with medium shippers, medium-sized shippers, sometimes they have multiple destinations across the United States where they're sending freight. Now, let's talk about the truck driver or carriers. Sometimes we think that the biggest part of the industry is the big mega carriers. And when it comes to the numbers, the biggest one is the mega carriers. But not really. When you really look at it, when you look at the configuration of the trucking company, small trucking companies, in the tune of 6 trucks and below, that's who dominate the trucking industry as far as numbers. 90%, a little bit over 90% of truck drivers, 6 trucks and below, are the biggest part of the trucking industry, right? So now that presents an interesting dynamic to those shippers that we just talked about, those shippers that are shipping freight across the United States. Well, now, if they wanted to move their freight with those small carriers, and they didn't have the access to freight brokers, they would have to go to each of those carriers individually to coordinate the movement of their freight. Can you imagine the chaos of a shipper that has all types of other things that they have to do? Now they have to manage the movement of freight and deal with truck drivers individually. That wouldn't work. That would be chaos. And that is why shippers work with freight brokers. Freight brokers provide a service to that shipper, and he manages the movement of the shipper's freight. Always is going to be on top of that freight moving from the pickup to delivery. Not only is he managing the movement of the freight, but he's also going to pay drivers. When those drivers are finished with those loads, the freight broker is responsible for getting them paid. And he's also going to be responsible for all of the paperwork. So the shipper doesn't have to crowd his desk or crowd his mind up with all of the things that are going on with the movement of freight on a day in and day out basis. He can focus on his core responsibilities, and the truck driver, or excuse me, the freight broker comes in and takes over the management of freight movement. That's a big deal. That gives him a lot of time back. And when he can have his time to focus on other things other than the trivial things that are involved with freight movement, he can be much more effective, right? So that is in part why shippers use freight brokers for their services to manage the movement of freight. That's a whole lot of value in that service to shipper. Now, I think it's important to understand that people just don't pay other businesses or other entities or other people because they want to pay them, because they feel good about paying them. They say, oh, I just want to give you something. No, that's not why people pay people, right? People are paid because they bring value, right? If you go out and you pay to get your yard cut, you're paying to get it cut because, number one, it needs to be cut, and you like how it looks. It's nice and tidy when it gets cut. So you're paying for that service because it provides you value. That's the same way with a freight broker and a shipper. They pay a freight broker because he provides value. So contrary to what some of you think, some of the comments that are left on some of the videos that I make about freight brokers not doing much of anything, sitting on their AZZs and not contributing very much to the industry at all, contrary to that point, freight brokers actually are a big value to shippers, because if they weren't, shippers wouldn't do business with us. And then if we weren't of value to carriers, carriers wouldn't do business with us. The very truck drivers that leave those messages in the comment sections about, their feelings on freight brokers not being worthy, not being valuable, are the same truckers that go to freight brokers to get freight. Isn't that something? That's just how the cookie crumbles. When you need freight, you're going to freight brokers to get it. Just how it works. That's how the business works. So there's plenty of value that freight brokers provide. They do a whole lot more than just sit on their butts at home. Now let's switch over. Let's talk about truck drivers. Truck drivers are instrumentally, critically important to the success of the American economy. Without truckers, we would have a serious problem. We wouldn't be able to go to stores and get things as conveniently as we do. The shelves would be empty if there were no truck drivers. But I don't think we have to worry about that. I don't think we have to worry about there not being truck drivers, because there are over 3 million truck drivers right now in the United States of America. And for as long as I've been living, I've never heard of a coordinated strike where trucks go on strike and they don't move any freight. I think that happened back in the 70s when I was a very little lad, didn't even understand anything about it then, and some regulation came from that, but I don't think I've seen that in my entire life where there was an organized strike with truckers and trucking just stopped. I haven't seen that. Have you seen that? If so, let us know in the comment section. I don't think you're going to see where there aren't any freight brokers, right? Because freight brokers have been around and will be around because the service is needed, the same way with truck drivers. I know technological advancements are being made all the time. And you have digital freight brokers, and now you have driverless trucks. I don't see during my lifetime it coming to where the human element will be replaced. I don't think you'll see a time where there are more driverless trucks than there are human truck drivers. I don't think you'll see a time where there are, the digital freight brokers, digital freight takes over and there aren't any freight brokers because the human element has been replaced. I don't think we'll see that within our lifetime. Before I wander too far off, let's get back to truck drivers. Truck drivers are essential. There's no two ways about that. When you look at the American economy, when you look at the supply chain and what it depends on, who moves the freight? Let's look at that. How do you think you get most of the products, most of the goods that you get? How do you think you get it? Do you think you get it by plane, train, or trucks? I'll tell you the answer to that. 70% of the freight that comes to you comes by truck. 70% is a big chunk. So that tells you how much we rely on truck drivers in the United States. So there's no doubting, there's no two ways about how important truck drivers are. And then when we look at the commitment of truck drivers, being in the seat, dealing with all they have to deal with on a day in and day out basis, working all times of night, moving freight up and down the road with all types of safety standards that they have to adhere to, being probably harassed by the cops sometimes when they don't want to be. There's a lot that has to happen in order for that freight to get to your shelves. And who does that? Well, that's done by the truck driver. So I understand, don't get me wrong, I understand how important the truck driver is, and I hope that you understand how important the truck driver is to your way of life if you live here in America. It is very, very important. But I just happen to think that the truck driver and the freight broker are equally important. I just happen to think that if you have truck drivers and you don't have freight brokers, or you have freight brokers and you don't have truck drivers, you have the same confusion. You cannot have one without the other and things still operate smoothly. I think they are both just as important. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. Please don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your thoughts are. We would certainly appreciate that. If you're interested in learning about the freight broker business, this wonderful business that I've been talking about, you don't have to worry about that. I'm going to teach you about it. I'm going to leave you a free link in the description. Check the description box. It will be a link there, brandonthefreightbroker.com. It's my website. Just click on that link and it'll take you to the website so you can register for that free 5-video series. We'll give you 5 videos that shows me in the office, moving loads, talking to shippers, talking to carriers, to give you an understanding of how this business works before you come into it. And then if you want to know more about how much it's going to cost to get your own freight broker business started, here's a free video right here. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. I'll see you at the very top because the bottom is much too crowded.